So I am loving my enemies today by wearing this LA Dodgers hat, even though the Dodgers just beat my favorite team, the Phillies, in the last 2 out of 3 games. But this is my way of fulfilling Jesus's exhortation in the Sermon on the Mount to love your enemies. And actually, we're going to continue looking at the Sermon on the Mount today in Matthew chapter 6. I'm going to be looking at the first 4 verses. I absolutely love the Sermon on the Mount, and I have done several other videos from this sermon. It's been a while, though, since I've done a video on this, so I wanted to pick it up again here. And in relation to this passage, yesterday I was watching an interview of Joshua Harris. A lot of you know who Joshua Harris is. He was a very famous author and a pastor of a megachurch, very well known. But in more recent times, he's actually deconstructed from his Christian faith. And I don't think he even considers himself a Christian today, or at least he knows that a lot of people wouldn't consider him a Christian. But in talking about that whole deconstruction process, one of the things that he brought out was how when he was younger, he was just filled with a lot of pride. He was very cocky, very full of himself, sure of himself. He was a best-selling author, I think, by the age of 21, and was put in a position of well-known leadership. So, I mean, with all of this, you can see how easy it would be for him to become very proud. But really, ultimately, that set him up for failure. And I think it's such a good parable lesson for all of us, and ties in with what Jesus is talking about here. The idea that you can be doing good things and you can look like you're really doing well spiritually, but there's actually a danger that we have to watch out for. And that's the first word that I see here in what Jesus is saying. He starts off this section here with the word beware, which is not really a word you would expect to see with the next phrase, which is practicing your righteousness. He says, beware of practicing your righteousness. Well, why do you need to be careful about practicing righteousness? Well, this is why. He says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. So the issue that Jesus is bringing out here is the issue of motive. And so this is a really important point, that when you are seeking to be moral and when you are someone who's involved in church, you actually need to be really careful of what Jesus is talking about here. Religion can actually promote pride, and we can be pursuing good things, but pursuing them for the wrong reasons. And that's really brought out so clearly here. He says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. So when you're doing these things that look good, but it's just really to draw attention, to lift up yourself, you're not going to get a heavenly reward for that. God is not going to be rewarding that, because he sees the heart. Man looks at the outward appearance, God sees the heart. And it's not really spiritually beneficial to be doing things just to be seen by others. He says in verse 2, thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. So I love the image that he is portraying here of these people. They're hypocrites, they're actors, they're really putting on a show, and they're sounding a trumpet before them. When I was in high school, I used to play the tuba and the bass trombone, and let me tell you, those horn sections can get really loud. Brass instruments are just very powerful, and trumpets have a very piercing sound to them. And he's saying here that this is the kind of thing people are doing. They're sounding a trumpet when they're doing something as good as giving, which is a good thing to do. But, we might picture them dropping their coins into the offering and it's making noise, and they're just trying to make sure people can see, hey, look what I'm doing. And I think we have our ways of sounding our trumpets today, right? Because, we live in a modern world with social media, online technology. We can just share with the world what we're doing. And if we're not careful, this can be a source of pride and bolstering our pride, where we're just showing off before other people. And Jesus is saying, even in their day, people were doing this. You've got to be careful about doing what you do to be seen by others. He says they're doing it so that they may be praised by others. And that's really the problem here, is that they have the wrong motive. They want to be seen, they want to be praised. It's really about them rather than about other people and God. I was reading another passage today, and this is in the book of Luke chapter 11, where Jesus is having a meal with a Pharisee, and the Pharisee is astonished that Jesus didn't wash before he ate. He didn't do the customary washing that the Pharisees believed you had to do. And Jesus says in verse 39, "You Pharisees cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you're full of greed and wickedness. You fools, did not he who made the outside make the inside also? But give as alms those things that are within, and behold, everything is clean for you." Jesus says what's really important isn't the outside, it's what's within you. And what you should be doing is giving from within. The CSB says, give from what is within to the poor. And so the idea of giving is a really good thing. We should be giving. We should care about others. And that's really the point. Are you giving because you really care about others? It's what's inside that counts. In the next chapter of Luke, in Luke chapter 12, verse 32, he's talking to his disciples and he says, "Sell your possessions and give to the needy. Provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." So again, Jesus is bringing out the importance of the heart. And giving is a wonderful thing, but your giving needs to be with the right motive. So what's the answer to all this? If we're prone to show off and do something as good as giving alms in order to be seen by others, in order to draw attention to how good we are and get people to praise us, what is the antidote to this? Well, that's in verses 3 through 4 of Matthew 6. He says, "But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." I love that picture there. You want to be so secretive, you want to be so modest about your giving that you're not even letting your left hand know what your right hand is doing. That's pretty secretive. He says, "So that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." I really believe what Jesus is bringing out in the Sermon on the Mount is what true righteousness looks like. It is really good for your soul to give if you're giving because you really do care about others. And that's really the teaching of Jesus here and in those other passages that we looked at. It is a great thing to give. But we do have to take a look at ourselves. I was thinking about the movie Beauty and the Beast, and one of the main characters is Gaston. I think a lot of you have probably seen that movie. And Gaston is this very self-absorbed character. I mean, all he thinks about is himself and how great he is. But I really believe all of us have a little bit, at least, of Gaston in ourselves. I think that's what Jesus is bringing out here. So the antidote to that self-exaltation and wanting to draw so much attention to ourselves, that's not really good for our soul. The antidote is to make sure that when we do something like giving, we don't do it in a way that draws attention. We're actually doing it before God. It's really about doing this because you love God and you truly care for others. And if you do that, if that's your motive, that's really good for your soul. That's true righteousness. That's the righteousness that Jesus is bringing out here, and that Jesus exemplified in his life. He left the riches of heaven and became poor so that spiritually we could be rich. The next section is going to talk about what we call the Lord's Prayer. Some people would call it the Disciples' Prayer. It's Jesus' teaching on prayer, so we'll look at that next time. But thank you so much for taking a look at this passage with me today from A Frisch Perspective.